I'm an average-looking female in my early 20s. I've always been the more cautious type, especially after moving to a large city from a small town in the Midwest and investing hours into true crime and missing person cases. My friends tell me I'm paranoid, but I'd rather be paranoid than dead. Anyway, the building I work out of sort of shares a parking lot with a Staybridge Inn hotel. The parking lots are separated by a little island of gravel that's probably 5 foot wide. Then catty-corner to my office building, but not very close, is a different hotel, Days Inn. I should also mention that these buildings are right off the interstate, so they tend to be busy with travelers and truck drivers. The Staybridge Inn just finished renovating and had a ton of random hotel furniture chilling out by the dumpsters in the Staybridge parking lot, which were conveniently right in front of where I had parked. With the time change, it now gets dark at around 5. But this night, I had to stay behind an hour to talk with a client on the phone before having to head up north for a fundraiser. After the phone call, I went out to my car, but I noticed two men standing and smoking in the hotel parking lot pretty close to the dumpsters. Nothing too out of the ordinary. I got in my car and locked the doors, of course, as I was looking up the address of the fundraiser. A lady seems to come out of nowhere and taps on my window. I crack it a bit, and she just seemed off. She kept looking around and asking me what the building I work in is. I told her what it's for. She said, "Do you work here?" And I said, "Sometimes." Then she asked me what all the furniture in the parking lot is for, and I told her that I think the hotel just renovated and updated their furniture. Then she asked me if I was going to take any of it, and I told her no. She was so adamant about me taking some of it, asking me multiple times if I wanted anything, or if I wanted to help loading a couple of nightstands into my car. "No, a desk? No thanks. How about that dresser?" "No, are you sure you don't want anything? It's all in really good shape." "No thanks." Keep in mind I drive a small SUV. There was no way a desk or a dresser would fit, and I'm sure any sensible person will look at my car and make that connection. At this point, I had a really bad feeling in the pit of my stomach because she said almost frantically, "Okay, well, I'm staying over there," pointing at the Days Inn. "If I gave you $5, could you help me carry some of the furniture over there?" The Days Inn is not a couple of minutes walk away. It would take at least 10 minutes to walk there, let alone carrying heavy furniture. Red flags were going off everywhere, so I just apologized and told her I had somewhere to be. I rolled my window up and left. It just really seemed like she was trying to alarm me out of the car, and her frantic behavior and persistence made it even weirder. Maybe she was just a nice lady asking for help, but if she wanted it that bad, why didn't she drive her car over to load the furniture into it? I don't know. Like I said, I'd rather be paranoid than dead. I used to work at a small neighborhood gas station. I was working an open shift at 6 a.m. with my best friend and a coworker. We were doing our normal opening stuff, and as the sun came up, I went to get some ice from the back. For reference, the gas station building used to have a drive-through, so we have that kind of window in the back. I glanced at that back window and realized there was a literal bloody handprint on it. I looked closer, and there were smudges of blood around the window handle that looked like someone was definitely attempting to slide it over. We were really freaked out, so we went around to look for other potential entrances into the building. I looked at the window in the front and noticed dried blood on the hole where we take money for gas from the outside, kind of like someone was trying to stick their hand in to get something inside. I kept looking around, and there was also dried blood on the front door handles, and also some splatters on the glass like someone was pounding on it. My friend and I were both freaking out at this point, so luckily I had access to the security cameras. I checked them for any motion detected during the night. At 5 a.m., there was a motion capture, and we watched as a man with his arms covered in blood walked around the store trying to get in. The freakiest thing was that usually the store opened at 5 a.m., but it happened to be a Sunday, so we opened at 6. I really dodged a bullet there. There were police lights in the distance on the cameras, so we called the sheriff. He showed up pretty quick, watched the security footage, and confirmed it was the guy. They picked him up just a bit after 5:30. It's the craziest thing to happen to me in my 3.5 years of working at gas stations. My now husband and I moved in together almost 4 years ago to a rather nice, albeit expensive apartment complex in a sort of nice part of town. We are on the third floor with a large balcony that overlooks out onto the courtyard in which other apartments in the complex are located. Basically, you can see the other balconies and living rooms of the other tenants in the open stairwells. A year went by without a hitch. My husband works at a bar, so he comes home late while I usually make it home around 5. It is easy to get to any apartment doorway as the complex is large and open, with no security doors except the door to the apartment. It started in August of 2016. I would be home after work chilling and watching TV almost always around 9:30. I could hear someone come up the stairs. Things would be all quiet and all of a sudden loud sharp knocks on my door. I did not move because it was startling, but eventually I went to look through the peephole. Through it, I saw 3 people all with black hoodies, all seemingly staring at the peephole like they could see me. I did not answer the door, and after a while they left. Cut to a few weeks later, the same time. But this incident, there were footsteps and then loud, hard bangs on the door that sent my cat flying to hide. I stayed frozen, but I said to myself, maybe it's the police. I made it to the peephole. Once again, this time, staring out at one person. It was a man. He had on a dark hoodie, and he was very, very tall. He had huge black eyes. Again, I did not answer the door and grabbed the kitchen knife that I kept by my side until my husband came home. This continued for weeks, and once, when my husband was home, he proceeded to look out the peephole, saw the man, and screamed for him to leave. And he did. We called maintenance and the police, who both stated that they would do regular patrols but nothing else, and they suggested cameras. Everything stopped for a while, maybe 6 months during the winter, which helped me be at ease. I had a hard time sleeping and stopped going out at night. However, I assumed the same started up again, except this time the same large bags on the door would happen. But when I would look out of the peephole, no one was there. I then became horrified as I started to notice extinguished cigarette butts by the side of my door. It was like someone was standing and waiting. Again, I reported it. Security stepped up in the area, but I still didn't feel safe. I was hoping it would just stop as I felt tortured in my own home, but I realized things could be much worse. At night, to go to bed, I would have to cross our eating area, which was right in front of our giant glass sliding door that led out to our balcony. It was a late night, the lights off in the apartment. As I walked by, I glanced over and across the courtyard. I saw the same man standing on the landing of the stairs across the way from the second to third floor, staring right at my balcony. He was just standing there, unmoved, facing in my direction. The same man at my door. I went in, heart racing, chilled to the bone. I know he couldn't have seen me because the lights were off and the stairway had lights of its own, but I was still scared shitless. I called my husband, who rushed over, but the man had left. I made more reports to the front office, and they promised more security patrols. This same creepy, dead-eyed man in the black hoodie continued to stand at the stairway landing, staring at my apartment. It has now been 2 weeks, and he does this every Friday. I am horrified, and I've been having awful nightmares about someone breaking in and strangling me in my sleep. I live in a very rural area somewhere in Europe, and I used to go to the forest pretty often on my bike, by walking, or in my car. I would commonly go there all alone to collect rocks and take pictures or play around with fire. One day in a really warm summer, as I was driving through the forest, I would park nearby a giant rock and began walking on this really stretched path. As I was walking, I would hear what sounded like a hissing sound coming from my right side, pretty close to me. I thought it was a fox. I turned to my right and saw a weird figure doing what seemed like abstract movements. I couldn't notice the form of this figure at all because of all the trees and leaves covering my vision, so I would slowly move forward. At this point, it was starting to take form. It was this thing with creamy-like skin. As I moved, I immediately noticed that this figure was actually a completely naked guy doing odd movements with his arms. He was on a blue carpet and wearing a brown hat backwards. I recall there was a backpack on his side. To this day, I still think he was doing yoga, and I just didn't know what it actually was. I think he somehow noticed me looking at him even when he was not looking at me, because he just randomly took his stuff and began running to my left. I ran to my car and went home, and I wouldn't be able to sleep that night. To this day, I still think about it, and it was incredibly scary to me. Today, on my morning commute, something caught my eye in the brush beside the road. I immediately identified it as a deer, either an adolescent or a baby. I slowed my car down just in case it decided to dart out onto the road. As my car slowed, I realized something was very wrong. The deer was frozen in place, cheeks stained with streaks of dried blood from its wide-open eyes. Flies were swarming around, and I realized it was dead. When I got to work, I Googled deer diseases and couldn't find anything that would cause one to die standing up. Unless it happened post-mortem, I have no explanation for the tears of blood. The more I think about this, the more certain I become that someone found the poor thing dead and decided to pose it right there on the side of the road. Why anyone would ever decide to do this is beyond me. Nothing like a bit of mild life scarring on the way to work, I guess. Nearby, and turned to look, there's this decent height guy in a hoodie walking our way. Mind you, we're now the only three people in the park. We stay there because we figure the guy must be walking the path through the park as the playground and out to the other end. No, the guy comes off the path and starts walking across the wood chips over to the playground. At that point, we get a kind of chuckle and shift around nervously. He starts climbing the stairs, dead-ass eye contact the entire time. This is where we were really nervous, us being at the top of the playground. We go down the slide, start walking around the side back to the bottom to see if this guy is actually following us. Or maybe it's just some dude wanting the playground. The guy goes up, comes down, and walks around the side. We took the longest way around, weaved a bit. This guy does the exact same. At this point, he seems to be speeding up to catch up to us. My friend and I look at each other, and we just book it the fuck out of there. The guy starts running after us until he sees we're running to a house. He immediately turns around and beelines it out of the park from where he came. This is probably the closest I've ever been to someone potentially trying to kidnap me or someone with me. Thank God this park is close to houses.